I really did have a huge passion for all these paranormal subjects my whole life. Where my awakening really took off, that a close friend of mine showed up one day, and he was white as a piece of paper. He proceeded to tell me everybody in the higher echelons of NASA was well aware that extraterrestrials were real, that they had come here, they had landed on Earth, that we had recovered technology from their ships, and that much of our modern advancements were a direct result of this cosmic inheritance.
You were born into this body with these dispositions, personality types. You had these experiences for a reason. We chose the trauma that has happened to us as a boot camp.
As you expand in awareness, you start taking in these other dimensions, and contact is a natural occurrence when that happens.
This is where we can really wake up, because when it comes down to it, we have to win the war ourselves within our own consciousness.
People hearing for the first time that this information exists, and for those that hear it, it's life-changing.
Most of the mind control and control grid that's going on is self-imposed.
Once one person starts researching and that domino falls, a bunch of different people are affected by this information.
All of these things are happening, and then we have a whole spiritual aspect of this. We don't even know our own potential as human beings.
We must be aware that there's always spiritual warfare going on. There's a war in the heavenlies, and they need vessels, bodies, vehicles in this third density to work through.
Why do we lose our memory of who we are when we're born? It's because you're all God. And if you remembered you were God, you wouldn't be able to have this experience.
We need to go inside to do checks in ourselves, to know what the reality of things are or not.
Humanity does have a type of free will, but we're not going to be allowed to destroy the Earth anymore.
So the elite powers in control of this planet are planning for doomsday.
So there's big changes coming, but everyone's got a piece in this, and no one's more important than anyone else. We're all in the same wavelength here at the most important time in the universe right now.
Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our destiny? That is the cosmic secret.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to say something to Beth. Your presentation meshes with the one I'm going to do very well. So I appreciate you laying the groundwork. I also wanted to take a quick moment. In the past, it's a little over 4 years, I've worked with David Wilcock, and it's been an amazing journey. Last year, many of you know, David was given major warnings to back off from the secret space program narrative. And he could have very easily have done so, under serious threat. But instead, he was loyal to the truth and kept integrity. And he suffered from it some. But him and Beth have really held up and been really strong and are really showing that they have integrity for the truth and are not being blown by the winds like many are these days. I just thought that should be acknowledged. Okay, I guess I'm going to sit down so I don't block the screen. How many people have watched Cosmic Disclosure? A majority, strong majority. So I pretty much told my entire life story on that show. I talked about being an ET contactee at an early age, not exactly knowing what was going on, being brought into the military abduction programs, and then being an SSP insider. I first started coming out on blogs, releasing the information I knew. For probably over a year, I had put a lot of my information in a blog, and that was some of the first information I handed over to David when we first started talking, and he started going through it and was amazed. And while I was delivering the information on a covert sort of way through forums, I was then having these interesting dreams that developed into more physical contact with the blue avians. And it caught me off guard. You know, and when they contacted me, they were telling me that I was a starseed, that I was here for a reason, and that there were many, many, many others like me here. And during this time, we're finding ourselves just coming together. And as we come together, our missions are being revealed to us. I'm also very close with Earth Alliance contacts, you know, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So Tier was the blue avian, of course, that I'd been in contact with the most, and other than the blue spheres. Most people think the blue spheres is some sort of just conveyance that brings me to the blue, or brought me to the blue avians, but actually they were an even higher density being. And the spheres that were in our solar system were actually beings. They were not technologies. They were these spheres. Size, time, space does not matter to them the way they exist. They could encompass our entire solar system, or they could become microscopic, or the size that is needed to transport someone. So they are actually beings. And I reported how I was then contacted by the Mayans and Ambassador Mika, and including a very scary encounter with White Draco. I've refused to be put in those situations again. It was indescribable. So that before was sort of a summary of what I'm talking about. There's me around 6 years old. That was right when I went into programs. They have no problem taking children into these programs and putting them through horrible experiences for training to bring out intuitive empath abilities, to enhance them, first with training and then with drugs that they would inject you with. And in the beginning, I reported that I started the programs when I was 6. But actually, the program started with my grandfather. In World War II, he was a conscientious objector. He did not want to fight. He was a Seventh-day Adventist. And they offered him the ability to go into a program that he was actually very proud of up until he died. They did experiments on him. And they told him that the experiments were to develop drugs and treatments for soldiers in the field, but it actually was the cover for a genetic manipulation program. So my story begins with my grandfather when they started manipulating his genetics. And then they paid attention to offspring, looking for certain markers in blood tests they would get through taking me in to the Air Force Base for blood tests and other tests. They were looking for markers. Not all of the children that came from this genetic program showed traits that they wanted. Some of them, they were recessive, the genes were recessive, and they didn't switch on. And so they were looking through entire families for maybe one individual. And sometimes families would produce no individuals. It's just the way it worked. So I was first drafted into the secret space program. I was actually 16. It was just before my 17th birthday. It was on Christmas break. It was during Christmas break from school, and my birthday is in February, so it was just a couple months before my birthday. And I was brought in and forced to go through a sort of where they just tell you what to expect over the next 20 years, that you're joining a 20-year program, and that, by the way, you need to sign these papers. And even though I was only technically 16 years old, they had me sign the legal papers. And then I was their property. All right, they considered me their property before that even. While I was in the programs, I had access to smart glass pads, a technology that accessed different databases, mostly earthly, depending on your clearance, and you interfaced with it mentally. If you had the correct clearance, then you were open to all of the vast ET libraries that we had been given or recovered from downed craft or other operations off planet to gather intel. That information was available to scientists and engineers, not the general people that operate the craft or even in command. It was the information was for the engineers and the scientists mainly, and because I worked with them, I had access to the information. Otherwise, much of the information I talked about on Cosmic Disclosure I never would have been in a position to know it, if I was not lucky or unlucky enough to work with the scientists on the research vessel. So I have contacts in the SSP Alliance. One of them was Gonzalez. He's no longer with the SSP Alliance. Another one was Sigmund, and as many of y'all know, he recently perished in an ambush that occurred on the Lunar Operation Command. Has everyone heard about that? Yeah, it's very unfortunate. He was transporting a lot of data that we had received on the Dark Fleet, which was the Nazi secret space program that went back 80 years or more. And they had everything, every operative, all of the information on hard drives. And he was to bring these to a meeting at the Lunar Operation Command. He felt that something was off, and he's a person that does not believe in psychic or anything precognitive at all, but he got a ping that something wasn't right, and he handed him off to someone that he says he trusted, but he always told me he trusted no one. He handed off this very valuable data to someone, brought in a decoy, and then went to the meeting. And sure enough, someone had gone in, and they're the ceiling tiles just like in any office, nothing spectacular. They had ceiling tiles, and up in the ceiling tiles, someone had placed a device. And this device, they called it a bomb, but what it did is it sent a very strong, narrow band of a certain type of radiation into the room, into a giant pulse, which destroys all organic material but does not affect technology. And they've used this in many operations on Earth, off Earth, going back. If you want to, if there's a ship and you're able to smuggle one of these things on, and you want to recover the ship later, you can set off the device, kills everyone on board, the technology is fine, and then they come in and will retrieve the ship or whatever other technology that they're trying to retrieve. And Gonzalez and a handful of others died in this, but the information was preserved, thankfully, and more of that's coming out. I'm starting to get more and more briefings on that data, and I'm looking very forward to releasing it. I have sources. I've introduced Dr. Sala and David Wilcock and Jordan to some of them. And some of these people are very damaged people. They're people who have fought wars their entire lives. They're very damaged from the process, but they're trying to do the right thing. And they don't know how to do the right thing, many of them. They end up finding themselves back doing negative things, and that's been a problem with the Alliance. But the good thing is that many of these people that I'm talking to are generals, colonels in our military, European military. I've some politicians that are disseminating information to me, asking me to release it, like the two DIA documents. The people that handed that over to me were the people that printed them out from the NSA database themselves. It didn't go through 20, 30 hands. So these are very legitimate people that have come in to form this alliance, and they're trying to get information out to us through tools like QAnon. Many people, have a problem with QAnon and understand, but Q is an alliance operation. The president is working with military intelligence. I've known the generals that have been, I know some of the people that have been involved overall, and it's a military operation and a way for, and it is a way for Trump to troll the media. Like he needs another source to do that.
Dimensions of Disclosure is a 3-day conference located at the Ventura Beach Marriott in Ventura, California, starting August 23rd and ending Sunday night, August 25th. We're a grassroots conference that started about 3 years ago in Mount Shasta. We don't have any corporate sponsors and are completely supported by the people through ticket sales. This gives us the freedom to be completely uncensored, with a collection of speakers offering a variety of information from different areas of experiences, knowledge, and research. It is truly a one-of-a-kind conference. If you've never been to something like this before, this is the conference to come to. So many people are waking up to what's happening in the world around us, and as the new people come together from all corners of the world, we just keep learning more from each other. You belong here. Along with featuring the many facets of disclosure, we also concentrate on what's next, how to raise your consciousness and stay healthy and transform in these changing times. That's why, along with some very dense information, we also will be offering Qigong, sound healing, Tai Chi, different types of meditation instruction at the beach where the sun is shining and the negative ions from the ocean are balancing our chakras. Our conference begins at the beach on Friday morning, August 23rd, with a mass meditation at 11:11. We welcome everyone to join us, whether they're there in person or not. And of course, every speaker in the Conscious Sphere Ballroom will be live streamed, so if you're not able to make it to the beach this year, you can still come be a part of the conference through our multi-camera live stream. We hope to see you in Ventura this year. You can get tickets at dimensionsofdisclosure.com.
So I was told that I was a starseed by an 8-foot-tall blue bird in a dream. I had interfaced and been aware of many different ETs. None of them were a blue bird, 8 foot tall. I was concerned. It took them a while of visiting me in my dreams before I started becoming comfortable, because the night after I had the first blue avian dream, I went out and I scoured the neighborhood looking for cars, any type of technology, anything hanging on a pole pointed towards my house, because I had worked with technology that could beam sounds and pictures into people's heads. So I was concerned, and it took a while for me to kind of open up to the idea that this was really happening and I wasn't being manipulated. So they told me that I came here to do this, and that this happens during every cycle. And it's basically being put in the position that Enoch was. Enoch had all of these experiences, and he described them from the vernacular and consciousness of the time. He would never be able to describe a submarine or a spaceship. That stuff didn't exist. So this is something that happens at the end of every cycle, and it's an opportunity that we're given to ascend. And I'm told that there are millions of just like me that are here. And like I said, we're all gathering and we're trying to discover that mission right now. So my mission obviously is to be a thorn in the side of those who want partial disclosure. And I've done a pretty good job so far. It's been a difficult road, but they could definitely, I don't think there's any way that they could try to roll out the partial disclosure narrative now. Too many people would raise their hands and say, well, what about Mars? What about, you know? And so we've all been very effective in that way. And to deliver the blue avian message that, that we, need to deal with our karma as though we have a choice right now with these energies coming in. And to do our ascension work, because the time really is short. And we've got a very short time to figure out what our mission is and implement it. And I think most of us, even those who don't know what our mission is or say we don't, we have a pretty good idea, because we choose life experiences. We chose the trauma that has happened to us as a boot camp for training. And once we realize that this has all been training, and we chose it for training, and then take that knowledge and apply it to the mission, it's very empowering. And all of the people that traumatized you, you kind of look at a little bit differently. So I tried to give this disclaimer. There is nothing that passes through the human filter that is not distorted. All of our perceptions are our distortions. The information that is presented to me, it comes and filters through my perceptions and my distortions. So people need to keep that in mind as the information comes to them. I'm definitely not a guru. People that know me closely know that I'm not the real pious kind of person. I'm literally Zen ends where butt kicking begins, for me. Yeah. So I've been. People have tried to set me up as all of these. They've misrepresented me and the information, and I think everyone here knows that.
Or cult leader.
Cult leader, blue chicken cult. Which you recently joined. So speaking of this crazy, unique experience, why all the turmoil on this planet? We hear that other planets go through similar things, but this is a special case. This seems to be where all the hard cases that are brought. During other cataclysms on other star systems, you're still third density. You've had all these opportunities. You're going to Earth. You're going to Earth. So that's pretty much the mixing pot that we have. A lot of these, and there's a reason for the condition of the souls that come from the solar system. There have been a lot of cataclysms. This is a very rough solar system, but these beings believe that evolution does occur through stress. So the stress that we all go through is very much a part of Ascension. We want it to be a beautiful, non-violent, non-negative thing, but it's all a part of the process. And this whole experience is about experiencing duality for the one infinite creator. People often ask, why do we lose our memory of who we are when we're born? It's because you're all God. And if you remembered you were God, you wouldn't be able to have this horrible experience. So the one infinite creator wanted to have all of these experiences, and we are doing it. We're doing it. So the condition of the majority of the souls on this planet, excluding the star seeds and others that were brought in from other star systems, there's a reason for it. There are cycles of destruction that occur in this star system. And also because of the energy of this star system, a lot of the beings that were here and developed here were not fully positive. They had a lot of opportunity to be positive, but they chose to be more warlike and more service to self. Because of this and their inability to ascend in consciousness, a had catastrophes that ended their planet. Maldek was destroyed, had to do also with war that was going on, but it had a major part of it had to do with the solar cataclysms. And then we had beings living on Mars for a while afterwards. And as the sun started having micronovas and also other active periods, the solar winds started slowly stripping away the atmosphere of Mars. And it became, they can't inhabit it. So they moved to the moon, and Antarctica. But the beings that were killed in the great cataclysms were relocated here and began being born into human bodies. I already went over this a little. So, yeah, the law of one calls what occurred as a soul knot. There was so much trauma that I think this mass consciousness sort of collapsed in on itself. And when it did, it was unreachable by the Confederation, the groups that were trying to help it ascend and get over its traumas. And that's why they ended up on Earth, to go through the cycle all over again. Earth is a refugee camp, not only for the souls that have been pulled out of other star systems as they're going through their solar events to live here, or to come here and become a human, but they actually, over millions of years, have brought human beings from other planets while their star systems were going through cataclysms, or while they were dealing with Draco infestations and other AI issues. They would bring civilizations here on Earth. They would be here for thousands of years, flourish, and then when the time was right, they would take them and relocate them back to their home system. So the Olmecs were definitely here for a long period of time, and that's Mika's people. They were here during a lot of the problems that they had, which Beth mentioned they overcame. The Mayans were the same. The Mayans were here for thousands of years, and their group came back and brought the pure blood, because it's part of this experiment, this 22 genetic experiments I'll talk about here in a minute. They took the pure bloods back to the planet and left a lot of the remnants of the people that had mixed with other cultures. So there's more than 60 groups that were in this Federation of Planets, and it matches very well with the Law of One. I was brought to a meeting while I was still barely a teenager, and I saw all of these different human types of ETs, and there are a few other types, but they were mainly human, very human. And the discussion was this experiment that we're all living in. And it's a vast experiment. And I served as an intuitive empath for factions of the SSP for these meetings. And one of the things that I hadn't really described before is many times admirals, intelligence officers, or other high-ranking scientific people that would often have meetings or would have to go into new situations, they often had a favorite intuitive empath that was sort of like an assistant to them, but was really an intuitive empath and was assisting them in these meetings, preventing them from getting into dangerous situations. So intuitive empaths were very coveted and important to the brass. And the Confederation, as I said, it's to manage this Ascension program. The ET groups that are out there that are human-like are not Caucasian. They're not. If you watch movies, you see tall blondes with blue eyes, and the majority of them are various shades of dark skin, different heights, mixes of you'll see African American type mixtures with Polynesian that just slightly different than what you would see here. There's just something a little different about them, a different type of human. So as I've described, there are 22 of these genetic programs, and they're more than just genetic. Some of these programs complement each other, and some of the ET groups work with each other on them, but some of these are competing programs in many cases, and ETs will sabotage. They will, let's say in the Middle Ages in Europe, they want to either kill off or change the genetics of a competing experiment. They'll go in and program a virus to have a genetic marker that will go in and make genetic changes to the people that survive the illness. That is one of the big ways that they call humans from their experiment, as well as make genetic changes. They do it through viruses. And also, to get around cosmic law, a lot of these ET groups will actually incarnate here. So a lot of people that are saying, I'm being taken against my free will and certain things are happening to me from these ET groups, in many cases, they are that ET group incarnating here, allowing this to occur for them to get around cosmic law. Not in every case, but in many, many cases. And there were some cases to where ET groups, after they were done with their experiments, they were leaving, and the people that they were interacting with they die, they're killed. And we were thinking that it was something nefarious. They're trying to get rid of these people as they leave. But what they were doing is they were retrieving the souls, putting them back on the ship into another body and leaving. They were just leaving that body behind like a container that they used. And we interpreted it completely different. We thought it was, they were destroying evidence or whatever. So a big part of this experiment, they would have to be among us, managing us all the time if they didn't find clever ways for us to self-manage. They give us, social traditions and religions, to keep us, you can't marry outside of your race or your religion. All of these different types of programming were created from religion, different religions, and social conditioning programs to have humans self-police and prevent us from mixing with the other experiments. It's very much the start of much of the racism and war and strife that we have on this planet was programmed into us to prevent us from mixing and getting along.
Our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
The gravest error a thinking person can make is to believe that one particular version of history is absolute fact. History is recorded by a series of observers, none of whom are impartial.
RF-4 jets spotted and took photographs of a huge carving in the desert over 1,000 feet across.
No tire tracks and no footprints.
The Germans had a settlement on the moon, they had a settlement on Mars, and they were doing this as early as 1939.
Between the age of 16 and 17 years old, I was transported to the moon, and after 20 years, I was age regressed back in time and then returned to civilian life.
Extraterrestrial spacecraft have appeared over nuclear missile installations and have completely powered them down.
We put together programs that went all the way out into the galaxy, not just this galaxy.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
This money is going into underground military bases and secret space programs with technology far beyond what many of us could even realize. Everything we learn is designed to program our minds away from the truth.
This film is the red pill that wakes you up to what's really going on in the world. And at some point, this is all going to break open. The more you get involved, the more compromised you become. They may actually kill you.
This program has several components. There's a religious or spiritual component because when you have a race and you want them to evolve, they have to have their genetics have to change at a certain rate as the years go by. They have to, evolve and change, and then spiritually and consciously they have to keep up. If there are traumas or if other beings come in and control the planet, they'll suppress one or more of these things and mess up the balance of our ascension, basically, the way we're supposed to grow. And the way the end game is that we're supposed to take over the programs. Right now, up until recently, we had all of these ET groups that were managing our genetics, manipulating our spirituality and our consciousness to keep us growing in a certain way. But we've reached a level now to where none of that is necessary. We can control it all ourselves. We can begin to, we know genetics, how the body works. Many of us understand the true nature of spirituality and that it's real, and that it's an important part of the ascension. Another thing I wanted to mention from Beth's talk is that Ari told me that this is all about balance. She told me that rebalancing the divine feminine was an essential part of ascension. That if we don't, that was one of the first things that was knocked out of balance by beings coming to control us. And what she said about us coming together and having the intent to fight is exactly right. And they've kept us divided to prevent that from happening. But now the reins are about to be handed over to humanity. This confederation, these 60-plus groups that meet on basically a space station and discuss our fate were recently disbanded. They were told that humanity was now taking over their own experiment and that they were allowed to do cleanup work, but it was all going to be handed over to us after this solar event occurs. This, what we're calling a solar flash, but it is a lot more than a flash. And of course, partial disclosure. I've been talking for years about how they're going to start showing triangular craft in mainstream media. You'll start seeing them fly in the sky. More and more people will see them, sort of like what happened with a stealth fighter when they unveiled that. And I did not expect Space Force to be announced. That was a pretty bold move, and it's meant to aggregate and bring all of these secret space programs, technologies together under one moniker to be able to be used openly. Of course, we've talked about the ruins in Antarctica, that they have scientists and researchers down studying right now that they're going to release information to the people as a mass distraction at some point. But they've recently discovered more ocean ruins. How many people were here from Australia? Here? Okay, this might be interesting if you know people who are divers and have this type of access. I was told that between Australia and Antarctica, and between South America and Antarctica, those two areas, that they had found a number of civilizations underwater, that what used to be islands were now deep underwater. And the navies of several countries discovered these going back decades ago. One of the ones that they discovered was off of Cuba. We've heard stories about people at Guantanamo Bay saying that they found Atlantis off of Cuba. And David Wilcock has shown slides many times of what was found there. But some of the next really big announcements, I'm told, have to do with the former civilizations that were found between Australia and Antarctica and South America and Antarctica. I was also told, and I talked to my Edge of Wonder friends, and they had heard something similar, interestingly enough, that U.S. Army whistleblower is being groomed right now to come forward with information about the Grand Canyon. In the Grand Canyon, the U.S. military for a couple hundred years has had complete control, and they found amazing things, things that validate the Hopi myths very well. That's a couple slides away, but this is the overview, okay, of what we're hitting. So a lot of the people I have contact with in the NSA, they listen to the information I talk about this wider secret space program, but what they're only aware of are a couple of space stations that we've had and these triangular craft. Though that is what is being aggregated into Space Force right now, I'm told, to be released. And of course, all of the information about Antarctica is going to be released. At first, they're going to tell us that it was a human civilization, and then later on let us know that they were human, but a little bit different. A little bit different. And the kicker of one of the reasons that the elite want to release the information about this lost civilization is because they're going to tie the 13 bloodlines to this group and justify why we should allow them to lead us, because they're demigods. That's a part of why they're releasing this information, in addition to it being a mass distraction when all of these sealed indictments are unsealed. And of course, we've discovered a civilization on Mars. Also on the moons of the gas giants, we've found destroyed civilizations. And the one thing consistently that they found is that there was a cataclysmic, there was a number of cataclysmic events that have occurred in our solar system, and they found mass ejected from the sun on the surface of Mars, on the surface of the moon, and other places, proving that this micronova that occurs every 12,000 years or so had destroyed civilization many times. I got to see some of the sonar from some of these locations. I think the one I saw was between South America and Antarctica. These submarines, if they had not told me that this was a sonar image, I would have thought it was a photograph. It was so high resolution, so detailed, it looked like a photograph. But it was shot in complete pitch dark with very advanced sonar that they have on these submarines. How many people remember in Cosmic Disclosure when I described us sending teams down into the caverns, into the inner Earth, to just see what was down there, and they started finding adobe villages and old buildings that were dilapidated and hadn't been lived in for thousands of years, and they could tell from the pottery and all of the debris around that thousands of people had lived there for a long time. Well, as they went deeper and deeper into these caverns, they started finding more of this. And I saw photographs in the smart glass pad, but I didn't know it was from this location in the Grand Canyon that this new whistleblower is supposedly going to talk about. But everything they found backed up the Hopi and Zuni folklore of what they say happened in previous ages, including finding bodies of these ET groups that they call the ant people. How many people here know what their mission is? I would venture that probably all of you on a subconscious level know what that mission is. You were born into this body with these dispositions, personality types. You had these experiences for a reason. Your hobbies that you were like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this stupid hobby? It's a waste of time. What you went to do, what you went to college for, if you went to college, what you're doing as a career, that is a part of your mission. It's a part of the learning process guiding you towards your mission. And what's going on, what you've chosen to do in life may point you more towards your true mission than you want to hear. Because it may not always be a comfortable mission. It rarely is. Especially getting introverts like most of us that get up on stage here and tell us to tell these amazing stories about what's happening to us. It's very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Sphere Being Alliance channel. Make sure you click on subscribe and smash the bell to make sure you're receiving all the new content from the Sphere Being Alliance YouTube channel.